Hello and welcome everyone to another Anyline Anytime interview. My name is Marc Babin, and as always, it's great to have you watching today. Joining me in the studio today is not one, but two very special guests from SEC Consult, a cybersecurity company that has specialized in ISO certification process, among other IT security services, and who we partnered with for our successful ISO 27001 certification. More on that shortly. I know we'll get into the complex nature of that. David is our security consultant and head of data privacy at SEC, and he is joined by his colleague Mario, sales and account manager. Gentlemen, so great to have you. Thanks so much for coming down to the studio and speaking with me today.
Thank you so much for this invitation. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thanks, Marc, for having us here today. It's a pleasure for us to join you, and we're excited to talk with you about a success story with you.
Yeah, absolutely. A great success story it is. So again, thank you both for being here. So let's get right into the discussion and start with a bit about ISO certification. Now, as I mentioned in the introduction, we partnered with you to get our ISO certification recently. But for our audience, I'm sure an overview of what it is, what ISO certification is, and what it means. David, love to come to you on this one first.
Yeah, sure. So maybe to start first, so in general, what the ISO is about. The ISO is an organization, an international one, which offers a quite wide range of different frameworks and standards that can be used to implement various different kind of topics within an organization. So basically, what this means is that you have a certain set of different processes, guidelines, rules provided by them for various kind of topics. For example, for quality management, or also for workplace safety, or also for information security. And we will come back on that one, I guess. So they're providing these subsets of different practices for your companies to make sure that you implement a standardized set of different rules and processes that make sure that as a company you ensure a proper level of quality, of security and safety within your company, and demonstrate it also externally to your customers. And that's exactly where the certification comes in place then.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and I think especially for technology companies and especially in the startup sector, it is a special opportunity for up-and-coming companies like Anyline to verify information security can be assured and according to best practices using internationally recognized standards. And this, of course, brings a high degree of trust for potential partners and customers as well as follow-up businesses.
Wonderful. Yeah, really nice outline of what it is. And we'll speak about the importance of it as we get on. So I guess looking at our specific certification, the ISO 27001 certification, now this relates to the standards being met when it comes to information security specifically, right?
Yeah, absolutely. In information security, there's no getting around ISO 27001. In addition to numerous other frameworks and best practices, ISO 27K1 is the flagship for security that a company is structured according to secure management processes. And yet the ISO 27001 is in particular is indispensable in information security and a synonym for high level of security standards.
Okay, I'm going to start calling it 27K1. That just sounds better. Yeah. Thanks for that. No, I love that.
Yeah, well, and maybe just to add to the statement of my colleague, well, as I mentioned, the ISO provides a wide range of different frameworks, and this 27K is all about information security, and thereby it especially targets three different aspects, I like to call. On one hand, the persons of the company itself, while also focusing on the processes and the technology layer. So you have quite a holistic picture of information security within this framework that helps really to have an quite sophisticated model in place that ensures that your information as a company is protected and handled very well.
And thorough, I guess, from end to end, it really provides that broad spectrum is what you're saying.
Yes.
Excellent. I love it. Okay, great. So knowing what it means, as you've both just greatly explained, let's touch on the importance of having it for a growing technology company like us. Now, I know we're going to have many listeners who fall into this category, and I'd love to know your thoughts on why it's so important to consider pursuing.
Okay, so basically, if I would have to summarize it to the core elements and the core reasons why a company should develop into fulfilling the ISO 27K standard, it's basically can be summarized, I guess, to 3 important factors. First of all, it's the security aspect. So when you're going to establish a management system, or management system is just the other word for this summary of different processes, different rules within your company in accordance with this 27K standard, then you are making sure that you have a sophisticated model in place to ensure a high level of security for your assets in the company. So that means for all the information you're creating, you're processing, you make sure that they are processed accordingly. The second big factor, I would say, is also something that I think was pointed out in the past from your CEO. Well, I guess we come back to that also, or we should come back to that at least, is the factor of compliance. Because, well, it's really becoming a bigger and bigger factor in today's environments and in today's market, that as a company, you're not able just to deliver what you're promising and to deliver your products, but you also have to make sure that you are compliant with the regulations that apply to you. And that means being compliant with your contracts, being compliant with the sector-specific regulations, or sector-specific frameworks, and of course, compliant with the laws. And this becomes a really important part. I just want to point that out once you go in an international direction, because then, of course, these compliance requirements become quite important and quite huge. And you have to make sure that you're tackling them in a systematic way. And the third and last one, I think it's also very interesting, especially if we talk about a bit smaller and younger companies, because the third factor I like to call as an important motivational reason is the part of standardization. So through such an internationally recognized standard, when you're implementing such a thing, then you also at the same time make sure that your complete organizations becomes very standardized and reach a whole new level of professionalism to make sure that you have a very transparent management, that you have very clear processes, and you follow a very systematic business practice when developing your products, when being innovative. And I think this is just a mandatory thing on the long run, to make sure that you as a company stay on one hand flexible, but also have a very efficient management in place that makes sure that you can scale up very fast, that you react to new changes in the market and everything like that. So basically those 3 points, the security aspect, the compliance aspect, and the standardization, in my opinion, are the most important reasons why somebody should consider for their organizations to become ISO 27000 certified in the end.
Perfect.
Yeah, and to sum this up in one more sentence, what David said so far, I would also bring up that for a growing technology company, the ISO standard is a great confirmation that many precautions have been taken also for information security.
Yeah, I really love all of that. I mean, it really stresses the importance of it. And when speaking with our CEO, Lucas, he's so adamant on the fact that you can only grow and innovate to a certain level without the compliance. There really has to be that balance, and they kind of come and grow together with you as a company. That especially when you're looking, and you mentioned it as well, when you go from those smaller partners to those multinational companies, they require this type of compliance in order to even work with them. So to get to that next step, you mentioned it so perfectly. It's the only way to level up, I guess. You can only deal with the smaller companies for so long. Once you grow your company, I mean, we're surrounded by amazing developers and innovators, as most tech companies are. I'm sure your company as well. You get to a point where you need that compliance so that your innovation can then continue. So I really love how you sum that up. Really, really well said.
Thanks.
Perfect. So I guess knowing the importance of ISO certification, again, as you outlined so well, and I'm sure the listeners will be asking, all right, I get it, I need it, but where do I start? So for them, perhaps as a rough outline, can you walk us through how they can go about getting started? I know for us, we obviously approached you as a consult group and allowed you to guide us through the process of what we needed to do. That's obviously a process you would recommend as well, right?
Yeah, of course, the goal should first of all be defined. That means what do I want to achieve with the certification and what should be included in the scope. That means it is important to have a clear idea of where it currently in the status quo and where I want to be at the end. So afterwards, the delta can be determined with, as we call it, a gap analysis for concrete steps to the defined goal. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I really think that sums it up quite greatly. Maybe to add the more specific terms, maybe where to really start, because I think it's also a bit important to have a rough knowing where you're getting into when you start with the ISO certification. So basically, if you really look on a more detailed level, what are the first things that you should do as a company, so in practice, to make sure that you're going in the ISO direction? So basically, I think the first important thing that everybody should think of are the requirements that I have to meet as a company. So first of all, the most important thought that you have to come clear about is to identify the requirements that you have to try to fulfill in the end. So is it for my customer contracts? Is it for my for the regulative field? So for example, in the field of privacy, do I have to meet certain standards or things like that? So knowing those requirements is, I think, the first and also the most important part. Because if this is not done right, then you're probably going in the wrong direction later on, and this will cause quite a lot of effort in the end. The second thing then I would say is to go in the next step of scoping. So you also have to determine what are the parts of my company that I want to include in this whole security area. Where do I want to go in my department and make sure that there are additional security requirements implemented, security practices implemented. For example, if I develop software, then maybe my software development activities are very important for me, while an industrial company, for example, will focus more on the intellectual property and patents related to the production lines. And then in the end, of course, what is also important, I guess, before starting such a project is to determine where are the people and who are the people that will have a role in the project and what are their responsibilities. So who are my managers committing to this whole project? Who are the people then acting in accordance with the requirements of the ISO framework? And who are the people also doing the real work? So who is going to be responsible for implementing stuff? So those are the three important things I would say that every organization should become clear in first, and then go with that knowledge in the next process to implementing the stuff. Because those previous working steps are really important to be clearly defined and clearly thought through before starting anything else, because then it will only result in quite huge problems if there's a mistake made in the beginning. And that's something that you really should try to avoid, I would say.
Yeah, it would only add complexity to later on, I guess, as well. Yeah, I remember even when we were going through the process, a large number of our team had to get involved just because there were so many elements of the business that are affected. Things I would never have known. I don't think many of the team would have ever have known. So I guess leading off of that, what are some of the common things that you see, and David, I'll come to you first on this, that you see that perhaps people aren't aware of that they should consider when entering this process? Now, either things that you've seen or maybe on their own.
So basically, I always like to point out the three major issues, the major problems that everybody runs into when not going prepared into an ISO project. So first of all, I think one of the most common issues that companies do nowadays when it comes to information security is putting the whole topic under the IT department only. Because that results in the issue that this whole security topic is only seen as an IT-related one. And as you pointed out, as also in our project together with Anyline, it was really important to also involve the whole business departments, to involve the management, to involve different departments working on software, on marketing and everything else. Because security does not only focus on making sure you put the right firewall there and to configuring your services according to certain technical specifications, but rather is about knowing what the businesses need, what are the real valuable information that you rely on. For example, this can also be related to intellectual property. which is not only used by IT, but rather within the field of software development or something like that. And therefore, it's also important to have those departments, those representatives from those business players within the project integrated to make sure that they can also issue their requirements and that they show you where the real need for security comes from. So putting the information security topic under the IT department only will, on the long term, just always result in problems leading to the complete insufficiency of information security within the company. So this is, I would say, one of the most common ones. Mm-hmm. There are two other ones which are a bit simpler, because then what also often happens is that you, as a new company, seeing the whole ISO 27000 certification, try to get everything certified at once, and starting with an enormous scope involving the entire company, all your locations and everything. And that results in quite an overwhelming experience for everybody, because suddenly you have to make sure that everything in the company works in accordance with the ISO 27000. And this is not always that easy, because security also comes with some drawbacks regarding the usability, regarding the efficiency. And if you start just including everything at once, this is often causing real problems.
Too much change at once.
Exactly. And also, this is also often a problem. So the third one, I would say, is then a lack of commitment and resources, because even if you have the best plan, even if you're really motivated and everything as a company, if you do not get the commitment from the top level management, so if your owners or your C-level is not involved in this project and not committed to it, then you're not going to being successful in the implementation at all. And commitment does not only mean that they really know that this is important stuff, but of course it comes also with providing adequate resources to make sure that the people have time, that they have money, that they have the knowledge available. If it's internally or externally, it's not the matter, but it has to be there so that they have the knowledge available to implement stuff in accordance with the ISO standard in the end. So basically having a proper commitment related to the resources available, that's also a big point that you have to take care of in the beginning.
So there's really, what you're kind of saying is, and I love that it pointed out, because I can remember it happening as well, but you have to, that commitment level, you can't stress that enough. This isn't just some side certification. This is a business changing certification that the whole team has to get behind. And I know we certainly did, from marketing to the accounting, to the developers, even to the office team. Everyone got involved in the process because there's so much, but that commitment has to be there from the top to the bottom.
True.
Yep. I love that. I guess that pretty much sums it up. That's what it is. That's why it's important. And that's some of the main things to watch for before going into it. So really, really great points. Super enlightening. Before even embarking on this, I had no idea how much was involved. Obviously, we heard what we needed to in our department, but to know how much was going on was really, really cool. And then to hear it from you guys as well today, it really stresses the importance of it. And once you get to that certain level, you have to. It's the only way to grow the company at a certain point. So really, really great points. I know that our team was certainly proud to have worked with you guys. Gave us a first-time approval and a first-time success, I guess, to get the 27K1. I love it. I'm going to say that. You know how hard it was to say 27,000 or 27,001 all the time? Yeah. Oh, I love it. 27K1. That's perfect. No, but seriously, from the whole team and on behalf of Anyline, that we were extremely proud to have worked with you. We're really proud to announce that we have the 27K1 ISO certification that'll keep us bringing safe and secure data capture solutions to our clients. And we really hope that this talk allows the audience to do the same. With their certification, certainly seeking the consult and the help that you guys have given us, which is really what this is all about. So good. Before we wrap, any final notes from either of you?
Yeah. The successful certification, I think, is not the end of the story.
Okay.
Furthermore, it's a start of a long-term process to maintain and improve the technology and the organization in some kind of continuous improvement process. So security, and as well as an ISO 27K1 certification within the company, is a living process and not a one-time project. So it's an ongoing and continuous evolving process. Yeah.
Really good to know.
Yeah, maybe I've want also to issue a very general point about information security, I would say.
Please.
Because, we talked a lot about the ISO 27000, and it's true, it provides you a great framework. And why this framework is so great is, in my point, one real important factor, and that is that it views security as a really holistic way, in a really holistic way. Because it does not only focus, as I mentioned in the beginning, on configuring a firewall and everything, but rather make sure that from end to end, as you put it very well, I would say, to make sure that from end to end, from the people to the processes to the technology layer, that you have to make sure that there is security in place, that makes sure that there is no weak point that leads to the loss or leakage, for example, of your information in the end. And therefore, I really want to stress that my recommendation for everybody out there, for every company, is to view information security exactly in that way, in a really holistic way, and not just focusing on the technology layer as it is done very often, but rather also know that security also involves the processes around that are used to determine where to put the security safeguards, and not only putting them there. And one more thing, and generally, I would say also important for technology companies, is that the value of information security should be seen as really important in the end. Because, let's put it that way, the real asset, the real value of technology companies in the end is all about the knowledge they have, all about the information they have, they use, they process, and they produce in the end. Because that's where the real innovation is done. There's the real value that a company brings to the table in the end on the market. And therefore, it's also important for those companies to also provide them with proper protection. Because if it's your most valuable thing, then you should also handle it that way. And that includes to protect it adequately in a manner that makes sure nobody else is able to get access to it, for example, without authorization. And therefore, I think that information security has to be seen exactly in that way, and that you should see an investment in information security also as a really important thing on the way to maturity of your company.
Yeah, I think we've highlighted that point really, really well, that it's more than just something to have. It's really something you need once you get to a certain point. But to view it in that holistic approach, as you both mentioned, I think is a really, really great way to look at it. So no, that's perfect. Again, I think the audience will be really, really grateful for this information. Hopefully it gives them the confidence to pursue learning more about it. Perhaps scheduling that first call to sort of discover more about it and discover why they really need it to move forward. So again, thank you both so much for being here this evening on this snowy Friday evening. It was great to have you both in the studio and really appreciate your insights today.
Yeah, thanks again for the invitation.
Yeah, thanks, Marc. It was also a great experience for us to talk with you about this success story, and we guys are also proud of.
Yes. Definitely.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
And to everyone watching, thank you so very much for joining us for this episode of Anyline, Anytime. Hopefully you were able to take some valuable information away, just as I have done myself today in speaking with David and Mario from Sec Consult. Stay tuned next Monday for another great episode. We have another great interview coming up for you then. But until then, as always, stay happy, stay healthy. We'll see you next week.